So, round one of the 2022 NFL Draft is in the books. A lot of surprises, a lot of fun picks, and for my Giants, I am overwhelmed with how well I think they drafted in Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal. But we're not talking about the first round, and as you can see, I have every player drafted in the first round off the board, even if they're not to the actual team that drafted them. It was going to take too long to set up trades. However, for round two, of course, which is what this video is, a second round mock draft, I will be executing those trades in some capacity just to get the correct team picking at the correct spot. So this is not the Jaguars pick. This is the Tampa Bay Bucks, and we'll start off the second round. I will be live for this either on Twitch or YouTube for round 2 and 3, either tomorrow or today as you watch this, the 29th. So be sure to follow me on Twitter. I'll tweet out what's going on exactly and when. You know when, though. It's going to be likely when the NFL draft starts. So I have to make these trades as we go through it, but the Bucks are in an interesting spot at number 33. And there are still some really talented players on the board. For me, at this spot, I would be really surprised to see them pass up on a cornerback with Kyler Gordon on the board, with Andrew Booth Jr. on the board. I think they probably come away with one of those guys. And for me, I think that probably ends up being Andrew Booth Jr. I think Jaquan Brisker is a fit. I could see also Logan Hall being a fit at this spot. I can see a number of different players in play. But I think Booth at the top of the second round is just too good a value to pass on. The Vikings pick at 34 after going Lewis Cine in round 1, even though, of course, we do not have that here because of the trade down. What would I do here if I were the Vikings? Well, I think they might look to address the interior of the defensive line, but as I said, corner is still such a need for a lot of these teams, and the Vikings absolutely need a corner. Even with taking a DB in round 1 and Lewis Cine, I think corner very much in play, and I would probably expect them to take Kyler Gordon at that spot. Huge trade going on. The Titans traded A.J. Brown to the Eagles. I mean, unbelievable stuff happened on night 1 of the draft. They took Treylon Burks with that first pick, and then they followed that up with who? They followed that up by trading back with the Jets, who moved up for Jermaine Johnson. And I think this probably will end up being an offensive lineman. Linebacker is a bit of a need, and there are some really talented linebackers available here at the top of the second round. So I think they could take a linebacker. I think offensive line is a little bit more likely. Don't know that there's a ton of value here. So I'll end up going with maybe the best player available, and that might be Nakobe Dean out of Georgia. So I realized I accidentally took Malik Willis earlier instead of Kenny Pickett. So I refreshed the board, and I see now that the actual picks were in order, so I didn't have to really even make any trades, which is, I mean, perfect. That's a blessing in disguise, really. But my Giants are on the clock at 36, and I really do think that one of these quarterbacks will be in play. Like Malik Willis at 36, I think is worth taking a chance on at 36 overall in the draft, especially not like after like not picking up the 5th-year option on Daniel Jones. The Titans could be a sneaky team for Malik Willis as well, but with him sitting here at 36, yeah, the Giants might opt to go a different direction, but that will ultimately be who I end up picking here. I know, great safeties, great linebackers on the board, but I don't think you're going to find somebody with the upside of Malik Willis in round 3 or at the back end of the second round if they choose to move back up. I think you'd probably have to pull the trigger on Willis here at 36. Texans at 37. They had a decent first round because they drafted Derek Stingley real early, right? And then they came back and got an immediate starter at left guard in Kenyon Green. Now, I still think the Texans are bad enough to where they need to just go best player available. And for me, it's probably going to be one of these edge rushers in either David Ojabo or Boye Mafe. I'll probably go with who I think is the better player, and that's David Ojabo. You don't need to compete right away. You're the Texans. You're not there. Get the best player. This is good bang for your buck if you were the Texans at 37. The Jets killed the first round. I mean, what do you say about that? They got Sauce Gardner. They got Garrett Wilson. They got Jermaine Johnson. Three probable top 10 players in the draft, and they did so from number 4 to number 26. The Jets absolutely killed the draft. They're another team that I think can operate on the best player available front and just really take the guy that makes them the best. And I really think that that's UConn defensive lineman Travis Jones. So that's who I'm going to go with here for the Jets. I think there is a real possibility of that happening. Travis Jones has been linked to the Jets under Joe Douglas. So I think that at 38, we could see that happen. I think Bears fans are going to want this to be George Pickens or a receiver in general, and there are some good ones on the board. I hate to disappoint because I'm going with Bernard Ryman. I think the Bears are going to view offensive tackle as a more pressing need, and it really starts to thin out. He's probably the best one remaining, I would say by a decent margin. The Bears' O-line is really, really, really bad, and yet Justin Fields needs guys that he can throw the ball to. I think you can find those a little bit later, and especially you pick again at 48. I don't know that a tackle of Bernard Ryman's status will be available at that spot. So that's why we're opting to go offensive line first, where the Seahawks have back-to-back first-round picks. I'm going to start with the quarterback, and I think this is Desmond Ridder range. I'm going to go with Matt Corral. I think the league views him pretty highly. I think he got a draft invite for a reason. Seahawks have been tied to Matt Corral as well. So he met with them at the Combine. I think it's definitely possible. And at number 40, this is probably the guy you want to take at this spot. And then we'll follow that up by getting them some edge help. They went offensive tackle in Charles Cross at number 9. And corner is in play. Some good ones like Wolin fits them so well. And that's definitely something I would consider. But I think this is a team that really, really values the edge. We've seen them draft edge pretty high before. And a guy like Arnold Ebiketie is just sitting right here and gives you a lot of juice as a pass rusher off the edge. As you get to the Colts at 42, their first pick. And I think quarterback Desmond Ridder or even Sam Howell could be an option for them. But this is a team that's kind of ready to go now. They went out and they traded for Matt Ryan for a reason. So I would rather pair Matt Ryan up with a pass catcher or even a tackle rather than draft his replacement at this spot, even if Ritter's pretty good value. I'm going to go receiver, and I do think Sky Moore is a really, really good fit for the Colts. And at 42, it's just too hard to pass on at that spot. As we get to the Falcons at 43, went Drake London in round 1. Thought it was a little bit early for Drake London, and I didn't think he was a great fit for their team. Of course, it's going to be tough for opposing defenses to match up size-wise with Kyle Pitts and Drake London. Those are some big dudes you got to cover, but they are still a team that's very, very far away. I think running back could be an option here, but I am going to go ahead and go with Boye Mafe. I think Perry and Winfrey could be a decent selection as well, with Grady Jarrett being a question mark for the Falcons' future, but they need some juice off the edge, and Mafe is a twitched-up edge rusher that's still developing. That's going to be my guy. You know, it's tempting to give the Browns a receiver in either Pickens or Watson. What I'm going to end up doing is going with Logan Hall. He has inside-outside flexibility. You need both edge and interior defensive line help. I think you got both with Logan Hall that can be a base 5 tech, slide inside on rushing downs to be that 3 tech. He's really, really big, and when he gets on a runway and he can bulldoze and really use that bull rush, Logan Hall is a really solid player, and 44 I think is decent value for someone that could have snuck into the first round. He would have been a surprise for a lot of people, but I think that was a real possibility. As we get to the Ravens at 45, the Ravens had a good draft, man. Kyle Hamilton at 15 or 14 I thought was good value. They didn't overdraft him. I think that's good value for Kyle Hamilton. And they got Tyler Linderbaum, who's one of the best players in the entire draft at center. They really just went out there and addressed some of their biggest needs. Now, they do need edge rush. They really do. They could use interior defensive linemen as well. And I think they could end up taking a corner. I don't necessarily love the corners on the board. I think they would probably view Roger McCreary as the number 1. But I really would be surprised to see them not address defensive line in some capacity. And it's just about finding the best fit for them at this spot. And that for me is going to be DeMarvin Leal from Texas A&M. Leal's good, has flexibility across the D-line, which is something the Ravens really covet. He's the pick here at 45. As we get to the Lions at 46. The Lions had an interesting draft. They took Aiden Hutchinson at number 2 and then moved back up to take Jamison Williams at 12. What a draft so far, upgrading the offense and the defense. So I think things are really wide open here for Detroit, but with Desmond Ridder sitting on the board, that's going to be the guy for me. He's significantly cheaper than Jared Goff and could end up being the starter next year, no problem. So Ridder to Detroit, I think, is a really, really good fit. And at 46, I think the value is absolutely there. As we get to Washington football team at 47, they moved around in the draft a little bit, ended up going Jahan Dotson in the first round. And we could keep going offense. I know Washington has been tied to running backs, had a lot of them in on top 30 visits. And with all the running backs still on the board, it would be really tough to not take one of those guys. I think linebacker, also a need. We have a lot of them available. I think safety could also be a need, and they have some pretty good safeties here. I think it's going to be tough to make this selection because they've been tied to running backs, but there are some really good defensive players on the board. It's a big position of need for Washington football team, the Commanders, I guess now. And I will end up going safety. We're going to go Jaquan Brisker out of Penn State because I think he can play free safety with Cam Curl moving over to strong safety. I think it's a decent duo back there, and it's just good value for the player. As we get to the Bears again at 48, and George Pickens is sitting here. That's who I'm going to end up taking over Christian Watson. I think his range is probably around this, and I do think he ends up going inside the top 50. Saints at 49, we saw them take a receiver and offensive tackle in Chris Olave and Trevor Penning. I still don't really think they take a quarterback. I think they're going to address interior defensive line with Perry and Winfrey sitting on the board. I think it's a really good selection. Gives them a little juice on the defensive line. Good pass rusher on the interior. I think that'd be a really good pickup for New Orleans. As we get to the Chiefs at 50, and this is finally where I'm going to opt to take a receiver, and that's Christian Watson. Chiefs had a great draft, in my opinion, trading up for Trent McDuffie. Unbelievable value at 21. And then getting George Karlaftis, also really good value at 30 or so. Watson at 50, I think is definitely worth taking a chance on a developmental wide receiver. Big, deep threat, great size as well. And that's something that the Chiefs don't really have. And Watson is a rare athlete that I think would be really, really good in this Chiefs system. Could go significantly earlier as well. Dude, the Eagles. I'm still adjusting to what I've seen. They got A.J. Brown via trade with Tennessee. The Eagles also drafted Jordan Davis on the interior. They've had a tremendous draft so far. And it's tough to find a player that would fit as well as Roger McCreary would at this point. I think that'd be a great pick for Philadelphia at 51. Steelers at 52 went Kenny Pickett at number 20, but they still have big needs all over the place at not only cornerback, but safety and linebacker. The Steelers are not quite ready, but it's tough to find a player like Jalen Petrie that feels more like a Pittsburgh Steeler, just a hard-hitting, versatile safety. Tremaine Edmonds is on the Bills, but Terrell Edmonds' brother is back only on a one-year deal, and they could really look to replace him, and I think that's going to be Jalen Petrie. That's a good value here. As we get to the Packers at 53, I don't mind that they didn't reach on a receiver. I really don't. The value was not there, so they didn't reach. It's what they should have done, was take the best player they could. And yes, there is a real need at receiver. 100% agree. And I think the best one is going to be John Mechie III. Really value him as a player. At 53, I think the value is there. He's just coming off injury, but he can be a solid starter for them and at least compete for that role. Mechie is a player I love. I really think he's so good. And the Packers, they got to find a way to get their receiving core better, but the value just simply was not there in the first round for them unless they moved up, which obviously they opted not to do that. Patriots, I'm going to turn this in real quick. It's going to be Leo Chanel out of Wisconsin. I think he's one of the best player to team fits in the entire draft. So the Patriots go Cole Strange and surprise everybody in round one. Chanel is really good value at 54, and I think would be a great fit in the Patriots system as well. Kind of has everything they look for. And then for the Cardinals, they traded for Hollywood Brown. They still need corner, but I think they're going to opt for a flashier pick in Breece Hall out of Iowa State. They need running back help as well. Breece Hall is a starter right away for them, and it'd be hard to hate on that. As we get to the Cowboys, had an interesting draft night. Took Tyler Smith a little bit earlier than he probably should have gone. I had him to the Titans a lot. I don't hate the value, but you hope to be able to develop him because he's not a finished product or near that yet. I don't love the pick, but I understand why they made it, trying to get a starter right away at either left guard or right tackle. But where do the Cowboys go at this spot? They've got a number of needs, and I think they really would opt to take a receiver here, and Khalil Shakir feels like a really, really good fit. They have CeeDee Lamb, they have Michael Gallup, but they don't really have much else. The Cowboys love their Boise State players. They have so much Boise State. They lost one Boise State receiver in Cedric Wilson. We'll replace him with another Boise State receiver in Khalil Shakir. Bills at 57. The Bills traded up for Kyer Elam, so address corner. Well, running back sitting on the board and Kenneth Walker's available. That's who I'm going to end up taking. I think it's a fun pick. It's good value at this spot. I think it's tough to not like that. Falcons at 58 took Drake London in round 1, and I gave them Boye Mafe at 43. It's another team who I think can just afford to take the best player available, and they lost Fuyasadi Aluakun, and for that reason, I think they could end up going with a linebacker, and I think probably that Chad Muma is the best one available. That will be the one that I opt to take at that spot. Really, really good player, and one of the best true Mike linebackers in this class. Packers at 59, it was Devontae Wyatt, it was Quay Walker, and we just took them John Mechie. This could end up being another receiver. For sure, it could be. I don't know if Quay Walker is going to play much at the edge, and for that reason, I'm going to give them someone that I think can help across the D-line. I know they got Devontae Wyatt, but I think Cam Thomas on the edge is a really, really good fit for Green Bay. And I think the value's there. I really like him as a player. And at 59, I think this is a good fit for the Packers. Could also see them going with another receiver for sure. I get that. But Cam Thomas is my guy there at 59. Bucks again at 60. First pick was Andrew Booth. I've made that, keep in mind. No Bucks picks so far. And they still have a need on the offensive line. They still really could use an upgrade at left guard. And yeah, the Bills could take Sean Ryan at that spot. But if he's still available, I've pretty much drafted no linemen in this round, and there are going to be more that fly off the board. But I'm going to go with Sean Ryan to start at left guard for the Bucks. 49ers at 61. I'm going to end up going with Tariq Woolen there for the size that the 49ers seem to love. I think that's a good fit for them. Chiefs at 62. We know what they did in round 1. Also took Christian Watson here in round 2. So corner's done, edge is done, receiver we've taken. This is really just best player available for an already solid team. And I think I'm probably looking at linebacker here. And I think they might choose to bank on the high upside of Troy Anderson out of Montana State. He's got freak athleticism. He was all Big Sky quarterback his freshman year at Montana State, then moved to running back, and then won Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Sky as a linebacker. Crazy talented player, and I don't think he gets past round 2. I think he's going to go somewhere in this range. Bengals at 63, took Dax Hill at 31. I thought it was an incredible pick. I view him so highly. I think he's great. Now, I still think they could double up on defense. Could take offensive line as well. Just get a younger guy in there. Then Cam Jurgens is good value to play center. So that's who I'm going to end up taking for the Bengals. Get Ted Carousel right away, but Jurgens can end up being a starter in a couple years. And then I'll finish things out with the linebacker Christian Harris from Alabama for the Denver Broncos. I thought this was going to be edge for a while. Thought maybe Nick Bonito. But Christian Harris, I think, is going to be the pick. They need off-ball linebacker. Apparently, Baron Browning is viewed more as an edge internally in Denver. So I'm going off-ball linebacker as opposed to edge. But I think Drake Jackson and Nick Bonito would be good options for the Broncos if they choose a more traditional edge rusher. But round 2 and 3 should be really fun. Super excited for this. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.
See me high step to the end zone. My life like a game Nintendo. Playing with the best, let them know. Get off the track, the train's coming through. Yeah. Promise you get in my way, then you best believe I'ma just run over you. Yeah. I'ma turn taking it back to the house. Defensive joke. laughing so loud. Speedbirds